I wish I hadn't saved my father's life. My sisters don't understand. I have no idea why I am sharing this. Perhaps I just need an outlet and some outside perspective because I understand how emotions can cloud your judgment when you are upset. Thank you if you read through all of it. If not, I understand because it is quite lengthy. I would appreciate any thoughts anyone can share. Background: I am a 24-year-old female, and my sisters are 21 and 16, along with my mother, who is 52. We escaped from my father years ago. He was never really present, emotionally unavailable, and any display of feelings was met with ridicule, shouts to be quiet, especially towards me, or him claiming he had it worse, so we had to endure. He exhibited physical aggression in subtle ways, such as pinching or backhanding me on the head, but mostly he would threaten my mother and me, saying he would harm us. The most distressing threat was that he would leave us homeless. He was financially abusive to an extreme degree, instilling a constant fear in my mind since childhood. My father pressured my mother into being a stay-at-home parent, leading her to resign from her high-paying job, thereby making him the primary earner. Fortunately, she was astute enough to invest in real estate, ensuring she had a safety net. To summarize, my father consistently held any minor expense over our heads. Food. It was a burden because of us, a roof over our heads. That was costly thanks to us. Was he stressed with his job? We were to blame since we wanted to eat and attend school. An amusing tactic he employed was to surprise us with an expensive item like a toy, clothing, or even a textbook for school, and then threaten to take it away or make us feel guilty for accepting it because it cost so much and we were ungrateful, even after we thanked him repeatedly for offering us something we had not asked for. Everything we did, even simply existing, was portrayed as a financial burden, and he would scold me for being such an expense. Can you imagine telling a 6-year-old that her father's financial stress is her fault? If I tried to escape the conversation, even physically, he would pursue me and trap me to yell at and threaten me. Once, he cornered me in the bathroom, covered my mouth with his hand, and told me to stop crying because I would wake my mother up, and that I was acting like a spoiled child. This followed a confrontation where I wanted to concentrate on studying for a midterm instead of hearing him complain about money and my mother and sisters, costly lifestyle, wanting to attend a friend's party in a new dress she found at a thrift store. It was frightening. My father became an alcoholic when I was around 14. He always struggled with mental health issues, with genetic predispositions, which I also have, but due to his family's tendency to ignore problems and insist everything was perfect because they had God on their side, he never received the assistance he needed and learned to cope poorly. Imagine a mentally unstable man predisposed to addiction, depression, and personality disorders, drinking to handle social anxiety. His decline was rapid. He caused significant damage, ruining birthdays, graduations, and more due to his drinking, but we continually attempted to support him. We arranged numerous therapists, interventions, and provided our presence, yet he only pretended to improve until his symptoms overwhelmed him or he became aggressive, threatening to cut off our schooling, food, and housing. The number of times he entered my room in the dead of night, laid beside me, and lamented how miserable he felt due to us, claiming I had it much easier and should just be grateful, was far too many. He also enjoyed going to each of my sisters, insisting we secretly hated one another or that our mother hated us, but only confided in him since he loved us, even if we disliked each other. Fortunately, that tactic only worked temporarily because we cared for one another and recognized his manipulation to divide us so we could not unite against him or address the real issue. Things escalated during my final university year. He had to be hospitalized on 2 occasions due to severe alcohol abuse, but would lie to doctors if we weren't present to provide the truth. He grew increasingly violent towards me. Thankfully, my sisters were not directly targeted, but it was terrifying. I had just exited a mental health facility, and he used that against me as well. I was admitted following a crisis, and he mocked me for it while blaming me for the cost of my stay, which was not significant. To clarify, my father is well off. His financial situation is substantially above middle class, but we lived as if any expense could lead to bankruptcy because of him. Following that, he attempted to visit my room at night more frequently to yell at me or disparage my mother, as she had started seeking a separation. I began locking my door, which infuriated and provoked him. One night, while I had COVID and was resting in my room, my mother was away and my sisters were out. I texted my mother that I felt unwell but was managing before I decided to call a friend for company. Suddenly, my father burst through the door, yelling at me, attempting to grab my shirt, screaming that I had accused him and jeopardized his already frayed relationship with my mother by claiming I was ill. He claimed my mother now believed he had been neglecting me, although he had barely interacted with me that week, and called me an ungrateful, selfish person. I had a fever, had coughed up blood earlier in the day, and was dizzy and frightened. I screamed and begged him to let me go, to not harm me, and to leave. Otherwise, I would ask my friend, who was on the phone, to notify the police. He eventually left, and I quickly locked the door, vomited, and tried to calm myself. My father seemed to experience a change of heart and began attempting to force my door open, damaging the wood in the process. I yelled at the top of my lungs that I would call the police if he did not leave me alone. He eventually retreated, but afterward, I passed out until one of my sisters returned home and found me on the floor using her spare key. So yes, things became really bad and frightening. If I could recount every single action he took during this period, everyone would be horrified. About a month after that incident, I was on my way to school when the lady who cleans our house rushed to me, saying in a panic that my father was on the ground and choking. I followed her to find him there, that miserable alcoholic choking on his own vomit on the floor. Honestly, I contemplated leaving him. My mind was filled with the thought that this was not our fault. Why was I forced to live in fear every day for a man so pathetic and miserable? I could have just left him there to face the consequences of his actions. In the end, I did not, and it is the greatest regret of my life. I took him to the hospital, yelled at him, told him he was a pathetic excuse for a man, and that I wished he would just die, then I left. I attempted to contact my grandparents, but they insisted, God will find a way, try to help him, be his support system, but I was finished. 1 month later, my family and I packed our belongings and left him. He became the source of our suffering. For years, my mother has attempted to divorce him with no success. He evades the law and continually threatens us with violence and blackmail. He took explicit photos of my mother while she slept and threatened to distribute them widely, as well as compromising images of my sisters and me. Naturally, the police were ineffective, so we adjusted to this kind of existence while the divorce proceedings remained ongoing. Recently, his health has declined, and according to my cousin, he is not even fully present mentally. He spaces out and struggles with balance, in addition to having breathing difficulties. After Christmas, my sisters attended a family reunion and spotted my father there. He was sitting alone, appearing angry and not speaking to anyone before leaving suddenly. He was reportedly covered in bruises, likely from falling, and had a corpse-like odor. My sisters and I discussed the entire situation. We find humor in it now, even if it is painful, and I accidentally mentioned that my one true regret in life was saving my father that day, that everything would be better if I had not given him that chance due to naivety. My sisters exploded, arguing that he is our father and that we couldn't just let him die, and I shouted back that he was not a father to me, so he could go to hell for all I care. So yes, that is the current situation. I might continue to provide updates since things have been oddly quiet from his end for a couple of days, which is unusual as he typically bombards my sisters with countless texts daily. They still wish to maintain contact with him. Thank you for reading. If you want to hear more about the outrageous events he orchestrated, I am more than willing to share, as this has been cathartic. Have a pleasant day. Update, March 02, 2025. I never thought I would update so soon. I genuinely imagined that my next update would come after discovering him deceased somewhere. However, we found him, and honestly, we have been laughing uncontrollably. My mother is horrified, but I believe the laughter stems from both trauma and shock. Yesterday at midnight, my sisters were trying to contact anyone who might know my father's whereabouts. My youngest sister messaged my aunt, who sent a cryptic note that read, "He's in a better place." My sisters rushed to me in tears, convinced that he had died, but we were added to a strange group chat with my aunt, who clarified that my father had entered a renowned rehabilitation center in our country for the possibility of healing. She insisted he went willingly at first, but none of us believed her. My father is a prideful and obstinate individual, so there is no way he would have chosen this. When we pressed her about the truth, she simply stated that he had been motivated to go. After telling our mother, she spoke with my aunt, who ultimately revealed that they, along with my youngest uncle, had gone to our home in our hometown about a week ago, discovered my father in a state of confusion and inebriation, and forcibly placed him in a car for a 7-hour drive to the rehab facility, where he was admitted against his will. He complained throughout the journey, but once my aunt yelled at him to be silent, he quieted down. My grandparents were vehemently opposed to this decision, claiming he was fine and could manage his problems independently with the church's assistance, and that we should return to him and support him ourselves. My aunt firmly rejected that notion, and so that is the situation we find ourselves in now. Allegedly, he has been attending therapy and must remain in this facility for a minimum of 6 months, providing us relief from his presence, though my grandparents are enraged. Thankfully, my aunt is unaffected by their fury. I must say that I highly doubt this was done for our benefit or his. According to my cousin, my aunt plans to leave our country for work in 2 years, and likely just wants to resolve this matter before departing so our grandparents do not have to endure dealing with my father, especially as my grandmother's health has significantly declined under the stress. We were approached about the possibility of speaking with my father's therapist to help provide insight into the type of man he is, or was. He is incredibly intelligent and has successfully outsmarted many mental health professionals, so while I hope this will aid him, I also suspect it may not lead to any meaningful change. Honestly, I am filled with anger. I feel giddy that he has to endure hardship, and if that labels me as a bad person, so be it. I am furious that my father's family only now involved themselves because his actions became inconvenient for them, while they disregarded our pleas for help during the abuse, insisting we forgive and forget. I am outraged that it required him nearly dying in front of them for them to take our suffering seriously, and now they have the audacity to ask for our assistance. I despise that man and hope he suffers in that facility, feeling powerless just as he made me feel for so many years. The thought of him throwing a tantrum and going mad trying to escape fills me with excitement, and I am unsure what that signifies about my character, but as I often say, you made your bed, now lie in it. With that being said, I am uncertain whether I should speak with the therapist. On one hand, it could be an opportunity to express my feelings and ensure the therapist understands what a horrible and manipulative person my father is so he cannot be released early. On the other hand, why should I assist him in any capacity? I feel conflicted, and my sisters urge me to communicate with the therapist, but I remain ambivalent. I am overwhelmed, shocked, and still processing everything. Any guidance would be appreciated. Thank you once again for reading. Story 2. I, 25F, have been unintentionally ghosting my boyfriend, 25M, for a month now. How do I explain my feelings? Please be kind. Summary: my boyfriend has an addiction to video games that results in him lying, ignoring, and ghosting me, always placing gaming above our relationship. I have attempted to discuss these issues many times and have tried to end the relationship repeatedly, but he excels at making me feel it is all my fault. I need guidance on how to respond to him without provoking a fight or allowing him to manipulate me. Due to past trauma, I am highly vulnerable to manipulation, so please do not judge me harshly. These circumstances have left me uncertain about how to react, and I inadvertently ghosted him for a month. It was never my intention for it to last this long, but I have failed to receive any advice on how to proceed and am experiencing significant anxiety regarding the situation. I am focused on my studies, which is another reason I have delayed reaching out further, as I do not want him to argue and verbally mistreat me again, affecting my academic performance like he did previously. Any advice on handling this would be greatly appreciated. Trigger warning: suicide, abuse, verbal abuse. First of all, before anyone takes out their pitchforks, I want to clarify what I have attempted and why things have escalated to this point. We have been together for more than 2 years, and it is partially a long-distance relationship since I travel to see him for half of the year. He has never visited me due to various reasons, including his inability to leave the country because of a past crime, which he minimized when explaining to me. This information about his restrictions only surfaced recently. We initially met in person through mutual friends, not online, which may be relevant. During my first visit, it only took one day for him to seemingly grow bored with me and return to his video games, despite my having traveled great distances to see him. Shortly after arriving, I realized this was not the relationship I desired, so while he played, I penned a heartfelt letter expressing that I could not be with someone who prioritized gaming over me. I cried while delivering it to him, and he read it without offering a response until I asked for his thoughts. He then laughed and assured me he would choose me over the games, promising to stop playing. I foolishly agreed, which was a significant error. Before anyone judges me further, you must understand that I am particularly susceptible to manipulation due to past trauma and abusive relationships. What complicates matters is that abusers exhibit different behaviors, leading me to mistakenly believe he was significantly better than my previous partners. I have recently sought help at a support center for abuse survivors to address my past relationship, as I have not processed my experiences and live with post-traumatic stress disorder. During my sessions, the counselor began inquiring about my current relationship, and we identified various forms of abuse. He met all but one of the criteria. She created a list of pros and cons, which revealed that the cons overwhelmingly outnumbered the pros. Despite this, I remain unconvinced, and I know you might question my intelligence, but abusers create cycles of dependency by devaluing their partners and then showering them with affection. He can be very persuasive when claiming he has changed, and those periods of improvement can last a month or two at times. Lately, I have come to the realization that it seems futile and that he is unlikely to change. The most significant problem is that he lies about everything, including matters that do not require deception. I have consistently stated that honesty is essential to me in a relationship and urged him not to lie out of fear of my reaction, as I become far more hurt when he resorts to dishonesty. I can manage the truth, but the lies continue to this day. He ignored me for several days following an argument he instigated. While with his family, he texted me that he might have dinner with them before heading home, but then he went silent for an hour. When I inquired if he had gone, I was genuinely curious and did not intend to sound accusatory. However, he immediately escalated the conflict, calling me ridiculous for being angry at his lack of response for 30 minutes, and began cursing at me. I attempted several times to convey that I was not angry, but he refused to listen. The following day, I sent him a text wishing him a good morning, letting him know I loved him, and expressing hope that we could talk later as I wished to avoid further arguments. No response. He did not reply all day. By evening, I checked his status on a gaming platform and noticed he had been playing for over 10 hours. I felt a deep sense of betrayal knowing he was ignoring me while engrossed in video games. I texted him, letting him know I was hurt by his behavior, yet still received no reply. For over 4 days, there was silence, including on New Year's Eve. I cried extensively during that time, feeling devastated for being punished for something I did not do but which he had concocted in his mind. He neither listened to my explanation nor showed any interest in understanding my feelings. I have a sneaking suspicion that he purposely ignored me to avoid being disturbed. During his extended gaming sessions, he played for 21 hours without a break on the first day. After those 4 days, he finally responded, perplexed about why I was making a big deal out of his lack of communication for 30 minutes. I had written several paragraphs detailing my feelings. They were not accusatory, emphasizing my love for him and how his actions had hurt me. I had genuinely hoped he would not leave me feeling distraught on New Year's Eve. While that day is not particularly significant for me, the situation amplified the negativity. I chose not to read or respond to his message because I had already attempted to explain my feelings 3 times prior, all of which he ignored or dismissed. He continued fixating on the imaginary scenario about my anger over 30 minutes of silence. Even if that were true, he failed to acknowledge the 4 days of being ghosted. I felt utterly drained, oscillating between contemplating what to communicate to ensure he grasped my points but struggled to articulate anything new. After all, I had already explained my feelings. The key was literally in his hands. I waited, and he ultimately reached out again after approximately 9 days, expressing concern over my lack of response and wondering why I had not communicated. He suddenly seemed to recall that I was his girlfriend and that I hadn't contacted him in nearly 2 weeks. Once more, I began to consider what to say, but nothing seemed adequate that would 1. Avoid instigating a fight 2. Ensure he truly understood me 3. Prevent him from manipulating the situation again. I kept delaying my response, marking deadlines and postponing until after my studies began, after my first lectures ended, and then even after my second lecture. My mental state has been poor for an extended period, and being in this relationship has brought me to my lowest point, especially considering he verbally abuses me frequently over trivial matters. I am constantly uncertain of his reactions. I can express the same sentiment on different days, and he might instigate a fight on one of those occasions. It often feels as though he deliberately misunderstands me, as he rarely asks questions, interrupts me, or allows me to complete my sentences when he erupts. This is why I am so anxious about responding. I never intended to ghost him, but thinking about reaching out sends my heart racing, elicits sweating, and ignites extreme anxiety. On certain days, I even manage to forget about him altogether, and in those moments, I am arguably happier and more productive than I ever was during the past 2 years with him. I fear returning to that dark place where I contemplated suicide, having come close to acting on those thoughts at least 3 times. I have come to understand that my anxiety stems from him and his constant dishonesty. He does not acknowledge that his actions could be considered cheating. He constantly gaslights me into believing he did not cheat at all. However, he downloaded a dating application, paid for it, and actively used it for 4 months while we were together, frequently visiting clubs while telling me he was asleep. He engaged in conversations with numerous women, and one of them messaged him, claiming a girl had kissed him, yet he insists that the girl attempted to kiss him, and he declined. He explained that he was trying to set her up with one of his friends, but that reasoning confuses me. Why would someone attempt to kiss you if there had been no flirting? That thought haunts my dreams consistently. He deleted all of his direct messages before showing them to me, leaving me unaware of what else could have transpired. I only requested to see his messages because he demanded access to mine upon my arrival in the country, despite my being exhausted after traveling for over 20 hours. He made a scene in the taxi when I texted my platonic male friend about completely innocent matters. I had nothing to hide, which sparked my suspicions about him. Cheaters often accuse their partners of the very behaviors they exhibit. He had an overwhelming number of messages with women, and a dating application which he insists he only swiped on but never interacted with, making it difficult to believe. He would never have informed me about the application unless I had seen an email notification on his computer while he was distracted. I have tried to leave him countless times. However, he is highly skilled in manipulation, making me always feel like the irrational one. He convinces me that I am undeserving of anyone else and that he is the sole person capable of treating me well. He frequently asserts that he is not like other men, claiming things like, "Other men go out and drink every day. You should be thankful that I stay home playing video games," and "Other men cheat, but I do not." He often compares himself to others, implying he is better than them. While gaming is not my primary concern, the deceit surrounding it is. The fact that he wakes up and immediately immerses himself in his computer, neglecting to send me even a single text until bedtime, is distressing. Trust me, I am an avid gamer too and have numerous gaming friends, yet I have never encountered anyone who plays as incessantly as he does. He plays every waking moment, pausing only to use the restroom, sleep, or eat. True, he works every other day, but he spends the remainder of his time engrossed in video games, and I am unhappy. Yet I cannot communicate my feelings to him, as he fails to understand no matter how I express it. He knows nothing about me, I know all about him, yet he cannot even tell me my birthday or my favorite food. Please also be aware that I have a pet in his care that I wish to have sent to me, so I am hesitant to provoke his anger. This adds another layer of difficulty in determining what to write. I cannot afford an argument right now. My mental well-being is improving, and my education is crucial to my future. If anyone suggests that he simply does not love me, perhaps that is true. However, whenever I attempt to end things, he cries and professes his love for me, expressing a desire to marry and stating he can only live for me, claiming he cannot survive without me. I am not convinced any of this matters, but I want to clarify that this is how he attempts to manipulate me into believing he actually cares for me. I am not sure I believe it, but it's essential to recognize that there are always reasons people remain in abusive relationships. If things were perpetually awful, no one would stay. Please do not judge me too harshly. I acknowledge I should have recognized the signs and patterns sooner, but manipulators manifest in various forms, making it challenging to see it differently from my past experiences. I did not intend to write such a lengthy message, but I believe context is crucial. There are even more severe issues he has caused, such as allowing my kittens to starve, but discussing that is too painful for me at this time. Please understand that I genuinely need help with this. I seek advice on what to convey and signs and strategies to avoid falling for his manipulation once more. I would greatly appreciate any assistance here and hope for kindness. My anxiety is overwhelming, and I feel mentally fragile right now. Story 3. 28F feel like my boyfriend 29M prioritizes gaming over me. How do I handle this? I have been in a relationship with my boyfriend for nearly a year, and last night was terrible. I am starting to question whether this relationship is worth salvaging or if I should cut my losses and leave. We went out with our friends last night, and it was a wonderful evening. I felt so happy and grateful for him. When we returned home, the plan was to give his dog a bath, take showers since we had washed the sheets, and spend quality time together. I visit on weekends because I live an hour away, and this is how we managed to have quality time. We gave the dog a bath, and I showered first. After my shower, I got into bed wearing lingerie, hoping to surprise him. Instead, he sat at his computer and played video games he had been alternating between all day. I waited approximately 15 minutes, hoping he would join me, but when nothing happened, I got up to grab my headphones, wrapped in a blanket. He noticed and asked what I was doing. I explained I was tired and going to bed, and he responded, "You beat me by 2 minutes, I was just about to join you." I mentioned I had been waiting, was feeling tired, and intended to watch a video and take care of myself because I felt unimportant. He said he did not like that and did not want me to. He went to shower but then returned to playing his game. He told me I could always ask him to stop, so I attempted to be intimate with him while he was gaming, but he rejected me. Feeling embarrassed and insecure, I went back to bed. Eventually, he entered the room and started saying, "You're a piece of shit, you can't provide, you can't lead, you have a terrible job." That is not what I said. I expressed that I was hurt because I do not feel like a priority, and it seems like he does not care for me. Then he fell silent and began to share a lot of emotional comments about how he feels about me, how attractive and charming I am, how I am his world, and how much he values me. After talking and discussing other matters about meeting families, he mentioned he wished he had recorded the conversation so he could listen to it again because it was so good. At that point, he was only a little intoxicated. He then made the decision to return to playing his game. I told him moving forward, I would only stay one night a week instead of the entire weekend, so he could have time for his games and give me his full attention when I was there. He claimed that was hurtful, and that I was giving him an ultimatum, stating he always wanted me present and to be with me, but I explained that his actions did not align with his words. He then returned to gaming and drinking. I eventually fell asleep. At 4 a.m., I woke up to loud noises as he was still gaming and drinking. I packed my belongings and began loading my car, and he caught me. He inquired where I was going, and I lied, saying I was packing to leave early in the morning. I felt terrified because he was stumbling, his eyes rolling back, and I feared he might have alcohol poisoning. He promptly turned off his game, came to bed intoxicated, and told me he loved me. This was the first time he had expressed love for me. I advised him not to say that when he was drunk and that we would discuss it in the morning. I mentioned that I care about him deeply, but staying up until 4 or 5 a.m. playing games and drinking is not healthy. I cannot help him or remain with someone who behaves this way. It is not a healthy situation. I tried to take his pulse, and he began chanting, 40, 40. I reiterated I needed to check his pulse because he was extremely intoxicated and I was currently frightened. I had never seen anyone so inebriated before. This morning, I looked after his dog, checked his pulse and oxygen level using his watch, gathered the rest of my things, and left without saying goodbye. On top of all this, I have experienced issues with his communication. I mention this because he stated he thinks about me all the time when he wakes up and goes to bed. I did not believe him because at the beginning of our relationship, I did not pay much attention to how long he took to reply to texts since I was dating other individuals. However, now that we are in a committed relationship, I have noticed he still takes 5 to 6 hours to respond to my texts while promptly getting back to others. He explains it is because he gets preoccupied with work, then gaming, and only later realizes he has not replied to me, but it still hurts. We have a wedding to attend this weekend, and I am supposed to fly down to Florida. I feel hurt and confused. I communicated my boundaries and needs, but I am unsure whether I can continue a relationship with someone who does not prioritize me. He insists I should recognize how much he cares for me, but right now, I do not believe it. I feel he is just now telling me what I want to hear. He has never expressed his feelings for me. I have also never dated anyone like this. I have had gamer boyfriends in the past, and they never let me sleep alone. They always wanted to connect with me at night. So, any advice would be greatly appreciated when dating a gamer. In summary, my boyfriend prioritizes video games and drinking over me. He claims to love me and desires a future with me, but his actions do not reflect his words. After last night, I packed my belongings and left, but we have a wedding trip coming up. I care for him but do not feel prioritized and am uncertain what else I can do at this point.